gentlemen, frequently during this convention you'll have heard speakers refer to autopoiesis or self-production, or to Humberto Maturana. So it's my privilege to introduce the man who created and developed the theory of autopoiesis. Professor Humberto Maturana is a neuroscientist, having studied anatomy at University College London, and been awarded a PhD in biology at Harvard. His works in the Biology of Knowledge Research Center, which he founded at the University of Chile, his work in neurobiology, the biology of cognition, and on feedback mechanisms in living things has influenced cognitive science, systems science, philosophy, evolution, and cybernetics. His early work on the biology of cognition provides an understanding of living systems, their evolutionary history, language as a biological phenomenon, shows how human cognitive processes arise, and provides a theory of the origin of what it is to be human. He has written more than a dozen books, including Autopoiesis and Cognition, Machines and Living Things, From Being to Doing, From Biology to Psychology, The Tree of Knowledge. Even a book has been written about him, rather engagingly entitled Life, the Multiverse and Everything, an introduction to the ideas of Humberto Maturana. By the magic of Skype, it's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Humberto Maturana.
Thank you very much. I feel very honored with this invitation and the trust that you express by being there to listen to what I may say. I also wish to thank Sebastián Gallero and Jimena Dávila, my colleagues that have made this possible from Chile. Now, I would like to say, in fact, I wish to address 4 questions. One, what kind of systems are robots? The other, what kind of systems are living systems? The other, how does the nervous system operates? And the last one, how do we operate as self-conscious beings? I think that I shall not say many things new. In fact, I expect not to say anything new, but just guide your reflection in a particular direction. Because I think that what concerns you and us in this approach to the question of artificial intelligence is very fundamental, because we are immersed in this, in doing things that in some way replace us. But do they replace us? What do they replace from us? In this case, if they replace something. In our perspective, intelligence is, when we speak of intelligence in daily life, we speak about plasticity when one is facing a changing ambience. We say, oh, this animal or this person is very intelligent, when you see that this plastic in a changing environment modulates its behavior in some way which is adequate to the changing environment. Now, let me say one thing about myself. Since I was a child and was interested in living beings, and my question was, what are living beings that die? And this is what I have been pursuing along my life, to answer that question. And in that process, I have been interested in robotics. Not much, not as you have been, but to understand what kind of systems are robots. And I want to say only very few things. Because in a way we are robots as well. Robots are molecular entities, have defined structures. And we are molecular entities and we have defined structures. Robots are made to operate in a well-defined circumstance. In fact, when one makes a robot, one makes also the medium, the circumstances in which it is going to operate. And we living systems are molecular systems, have well-defined shapes. We are made in a well-precise manner as robots, and we operate in circumstances. Whenever you look around and you see a living being, you find that it is operating in a medium that agrees with it, and when this coherence, for some reason, disappears, the living system dies. What is the difference? Well, the difference is that living systems are historical beings. They are the present of a long history of transformation of the manner of realization of the living. Since 4,800 million years ago, with the origin of the earliest bacteria. And the robots are not historical. They are made, conceived, and begin their existence in the moment in which the designer presses a button which starts it and begins to operate. And this is a very interesting difference because it relates with the fact that in a robot one specifies the circumstance in which it is going to operate, however sophisticated this may be. But living systems, you do not specify the circumstance in which they operate. It has arisen historically with them. We human beings do not want anybody else to specify the circumstance in which we operate. I mean, does any one of you like that somebody else specifies the circumstance in which you operate? I imagine that no one wants that. Well, perhaps a little bit occasionally, for a while. So in that sense, we are operationally different. We are historical beings. We are the present of the history of transformation of the living system and the circumstance in which it operates. So that there are many different manners of the living system, all of which operate in different circumstances, in a coherence that has arisen along history. So in a strict sense, the history of living system is the history of the unity, organism, niche, changing together. Individually, in the genesis, or through generations. It's not the evolution of the living system only, it's the evolution of the ecological unity, organism, niche. Now, in this sense, what are living systems indeed? Well, we are molecular entities organized as self-producing molecular systems. And this is what constitutes our individuality as living systems. What has concerned along history is the realization of the self-production of these molecular autopoietic entities in relation with the circumstances in which they can realize themselves as one particular manner of realization of the autopoiesis, the molecular autopoiesis. And in this present, this circumstance of being this kind of being, we have become, well, we arose in history, in this evolutionary history, in some moment in which language began to be our manner, or the manner of living together of our ancestors. And language is not the way of talking about independent things, but is the manner of living together. I can say this because one thing that happens with us living systems is that being molecular systems, the external entities that impinge upon us do not specify what happens in us. The same as in robots. When something external to the robot impinges upon it, does not specify what happens in it, only triggers, changes in it. What changes? Those which are defined by the way they are made. If one makes a robot, one makes it with a sensory surface, operational surface, and so on and so forth. And this defines the relational space that it admits. And whatever external to it impinging on it means triggers, changes, determining the manner it is made. Well, this is the same with us. External things do not specify what happens in us, trigger in us, changes determined in the way we are made as molecular autopoietic systems. But this has a very fundamental consequence, which is that our notion of our relation with an environment in which we assume that we are immersed in an environment that pre-exists to us and that we can know because it tells us how it is, cannot be sustained. In the experience, we do not know when we are living something that we may later call an illusion or a perception. We never know if what we are doing, we shall treat it later as a mistake. Because living systems live everything that they live as valid in the moment in which they live it. The illusion, the mistake, are reflections that one makes comparing different experiences. So we cannot say how it is. We speak about reality, and reality is a matter of explaining, it's an explanatory proposition, but we cannot say anything about something that is external to us. Language does not consist in a manner, systemic, symbolic manner of referring to independent entities, ideas. It's a manner of living together. It's a manner of living in coordinations, reversal coordinations of feelings, doings, and emotions. If you think about what you do when you speak through a telephone or directly with another person, we may say we transmit information, but in fact what we do is something different. We coordinate our doings. We coordinate our feelings. Furthermore, we coordinate our coordinations of doings and feelings. And we live in this curious situation in which we have a structure, but what we do is not in the structure but in the relation. No doubt we have a nervous system, and without our nervous system we will not be able to behave. But the behavior takes place in the relation, not in the nervous system. The nervous system modulates the dynamic of our structural changes. But the behavior arises in the relation. When we say that we walk, and that we do the walking by moving the legs, and so on and so forth, and this is done through the operation of the sensors, the nervous systems, the muscles, and so on and so forth. But the walking arises in the relation to the ground. So we exist in a relational domain, not in a structural domain. What we do robot is the same. So far there is no difference. But the difference is in that we are historical beings, we have not been designed, we have a recent historical process, and the robots we design whatever complexity can and whatever it is. And this is the condition that we do not know in the experience whether we shall treat it later as a perception or as an illusion, does not constitute a problem. It's not a difficulty of the operation of the nervous system. It's our condition of existence. And in daily life, this is very apparent. Somebody says, oh, there is such and such a thing. And the other person asks, how do you know? And the answer will be some additional operation that one will perform, which will, according to the person that is speaking, confirm the first assertion that there is such and such a thing. So we confirm what we see with our listening, we confirm what we listen by our touching, and so on and so forth. We confirm what we do with our sensors. What we do never refers to something independent from us. So, the manner of living, what we need occurs in the relation. Language requires the nervous system, but occurs in the relation. It's not in the brain. This is why I have written in some articles that the mind is not in the head, it's in the relation. Well, this is very interesting because this relates to what I said earlier, that when we speak of intelligence, we speak about the kind of manner the person or an animal is living in a changing circumstance. If it has plasticity, if it moves according to the changing circumstances, then we say it's very intelligent. Because intelligence does not occur in the brain, it occurs in the relation. But at the same time, without the brain, there's no relation. Now, what does the brain do? What does the nervous system do? Does it make representations of the environment? Strictly cannot do so. But we can correlate activities in the nervous system with circumstances in the environment. But what the nervous system does is only to generate changes of relation of activity within itself. The nervous system is a network of elements interconnected with each other, which in our case are cells, neurons, in paramecium are molecules, in such a way that in this dynamic, an observer from outside will see sensory effective correlations in the dynamic. But has nothing to do with external world. Well, historically, yes. But in the doing itself, no. This is why the unity of the organism and the niche is essential. When the coherence between the organism and the medium disappears, the organism disintegrates. So the nervous system operates generating sensory affective correlations in the organism. And as a result of it being a historical entity which has a reason in the evolutionary history in the coherent transformation of the ecological unity organism niche, it finds itself in a situation in which it generates sensory affective correlation in itself, which has a sense in the relational space which is the niche. And if part of the niche is other living beings, in relation with the other living beings. In our case, language obviously becomes a manner of being together. Intercursive coordinations of our feelings, our emotions, and our doings. So, ladies and gentlemen, we exist, human beings, humanness occurs in relation, and at the same time correlates this with the body dynamics, which makes possible this existence in the relational space within each as a result of a history. Each one of us is where it is now, in this very instant, you there, me and I here in Chile, and each one with its own kind of presence as a result of individual history that we have lived together. It is because we have lived together that we understand each other. And language operates as a means of correlation, coordination better, and coordinations of our behavior. And as it operates in that way, we in language, in this recursion of coordination, we can distinguish what we do. And then we can, of course, make symbolic systems, we can make all that we do, because we live immersed in this sort of mushroom of recursive coordinations of doings, feelings, emotions, behavior, which results in all that we are doing. Languaging. We human beings exist in languaging. And I use the expression languaging because language occurs in the flow of living together. It's not an entity. Language is a noun, but its occurrence is not a noun, it's a dynamic. Every noun hides a verb. The verb that makes the dynamic, that makes that distinction that we make when we say this is a table or this is a teacup. Now, this is in general terms. Now, what does the nervous system properly does? What do the neurons do? What neurons do is to respond to configurations of activity. Now, if you remember a neuron, I cannot make a drawing there, but you have the body of the cell, the branching, which is called its dendritic arm temporization, an action and a terminal. For example, that reaches a muscle, and where you have a neurotransmitter that activates, triggers in the next cell something, determined in the next cell. But the nerve impulse arises in the nerve cell as a result of a configuration of activity in its dendrites, resulting from the other nerve cells impinging upon it. So, the beauty of this is that the nervous system grasps configurations, not particular entities. The particular entities are intersections of configurations. And this makes this the nervous system this system that permits us to do whatever we do, because whenever something repeats, we grasp the configuration. This notion of obtaining the signal from the noise is the capturing of the configuration that is particular according to some attention that we may have in the circumstances in which we are. So we, as languaging beings, operating with the nervous system that distinguishes configurations of relations of activity in itself or in its sensory and affective surfaces, generate, as languaging beings, we human beings, as languaging beings, distinctions or the distinctions of what we do. We cannot claim anything about something independent from us, but we always know what we are doing when we distinguish something. So the question, when somebody makes a cognitive assertion, says, I know such and such a thing, the other person asks, how do you know? What is this other person present to you and behavior? We always know, we can know what we do. We have no way, and this is not a limitation, to say anything about something independent from us. So things are as they appear in our doing. Well, what about self-consciousness? We say, for example, that an animal knows its body. If you have a cat at home, and there is lying on the carpet or on the sofa, and you extend your hand to touch its tail, it moves the tail. That's beautiful. You would like to make a robot that does that. It should not be difficult. It depends on how you arrange the sensories, the effective surfaces of the robot. But the beauty is that the cat knows its body. Yes, when it itches something, it scratches it. This seems very simple, but it's an action upon itself. If I'm going to reach to its tail, it moves the tail. And if we say it knows its body, but what it cannot do is to reflect upon its knowing its body. And cannot do so because does not exist in language. Because language is coordinations of doing. In the relation, languaging occurs in living together. Now, once the child learns to coordinate and coordinate his coordination of behavior with the mother, with the father at home, and we say is learning language, and does things in coordination with us. You can say, please pass me the apple, and the child does that which you call passing the apple. And there you have coordination of behavior, and coordination of behavior. You can ask, will you pass me the apple? And you are asking a question that entails that the child not only know how to handle the apple, but can also speak about it having done so. Well, we can say that the cat is conscious because it knows its body. But unless it were to have a behavior that you can say it knows that it's knowing its body, you cannot say that it's self-conscious. But we do this. Perhaps the most important question that the mother or father makes to a child is that in which she or he says, John, do you know what you are doing? This is a fantastic question, which a child of 3 years old can answer. It's a question that is addressing the attention of the behavior in this relation to the behavior in the relation. Self-consciousness is not in the brain. It's in the relation. And this is the relation because self-consciousness can have, or maybe can happen, in language, in a system of recursion of the coordinations of doing and the coordinations of doings or of feelings. So, if you were to make a robot self-conscious, we would have to make it languaging. Yes, within the brain, for self-consciousness to occur, but does not occur in the brain, occurs in the flow of the relation as we exist as language beings. But since the manner of living of us human beings is in language and in self-consciousness, all what we do occurs in that dynamic. And since we have a plastic structure, because as autopoietic, molecular autopoietic system, on the one hand we're changing continuously, and in the process of realizing our living in growth, we're changing continuously too. And whatever is happening, our structure, is changing continuously as a result of the interaction, not specified by the external thing, but triggered by the external thing. And in living together, this mutual triggering is continually resulting in a flow of coordinations of our doings, and if we are languaging beings, in a flow of coordinations of our recursive coordinations of feelings and doings. Language then can be used to symbolize, but it's not a symbolic system. It's a flow in living together, recursive coordinations of feelings emotions, and doings. Can this be imitated? Of course. Of course we can imitate it. Do we want it to imitate it? That's another thing. We human beings are in a position in which we can do whatever we wish or imagine, better, whatever we imagine, if we operate in the structural coherences of the domain in which we imagine it. And this is something very fantastic and very beautiful, and at the same time very terrible. Because we depend on what we imagine. And what do we imagine will depend on how we are living. You get it? Because we human beings become human beings living together. A child grown alone, that's not language. Lives like any other animal who is not brought up in language. Can we generate a living together in languaging with other animals? Well, obviously this can be done with primates, with gorillas, with chimpanzees. This has been done. But there is something that has to do with us, is that due to the manner we are made, due to the evolutionary history to which we belong, we have different manner of living than other animals. Our concern is different. When we go out with our dog, we have a dog with whom living with us, or we living with our dog. And friendly, we play, we caress each other, and so on and so forth. And we come out of the apartment or out of the house to the street. And what is the most interesting thing for human beings, and what is the most interesting thing for dogs? The most interesting thing for dogs are other dogs. And the most interesting thing for human beings are other human beings. Yeah, this is in our biology. This fundamental manner of connecting with our beings, with other beings. Dog is a dog, a chimpanzee is a chimpanzee, a gorilla is a chimpanzee, a gorilla. Even language. If you bring up with you a chimpanzee or a gorilla, this has been done. You can language with it. But the moment comes in which the gorilla is gorilla, lives with you as if it were a human being, because you can make questions to it. You can ask the gorilla that has been living with you. Coco was one of the first one that was brought up in this way in California, in Stanford. No, they present photographs of human beings and gorillas, and they say, "Are you a human being?" And they say, "No, I am a gorilla." Of course, this has been learned, that the distinction of identity has to do with one's own feeling. This is not learned. This has to do with the biology. See, we have a body, a shape, a structural dynamic for movements, and we can do all the fantastic things that we do, dance, jump, athletics, look to the marvelous things that do people skating. All with the same body. You can swim, you can surf, you can skate and do jumpings and somersaults with the same body. Just with the practice changes the inner structure of the body so that the correlation that you generate with your nervous system change, and given the proper circumstances you can do different things that you do in other circumstances. And the same happens without empathy, without thinking. We can reflect or not reflect. Depends on us. Now, what is the path that history of living beings has followed? We think that the living of living system is guided by its sensoriality, by its senses. Evolution has been guided by the sensoriality, which has to do with the realization of the conditions of living according to the characteristic of the organism in that moment of history in which it finds itself. We human beings follow the path of our sensoriality. You are here attending this lecture because of your sensoriality. You move through your correct sensory correlations in displacement, but in reflecting too. So we human beings do what seems desirable for us. We follow the path of what we want to realize, what we want to conserve. Now you have some reflection I saw in the titles of the presentations in this meeting, some reflections in relation to ethics. I did not attend the lecture, I was here, but ethics appears in the title. And this is a very important thing, because ethics has to do with our awareness, consciousness, self-consciousness of the consequences of what we do. Ethics is different from morals. Morals has to do with norms, with laws, with habits. But ethics has to do with our awareness of the consequences of what we do in relation to other human beings, or to our surroundings, and we choose to do one thing or another. And according to what we choose, another person will say we have had an ethical behavior or not ethical behavior. So the real question in the long run is, what do we want to conserve in our living? We can do robotics, artificial intelligence, medicine, biology, architecture, whatever it is. But the fundamental question always comes to be, what do we want with what we do? And this, I believe, is an open question for conversation. I have no more to say, or much to say, so I also want to participate in some interactions with you. Questions, reflections. I'm ready to answer all questions. All questions are legitimate.
Thank you, Humberto.